Welcome to Reflections, a program where we discuss values and virtues for the transformation of the individual and the society in general. I am Father George Ehusani, and I have with me in the studio today Father Uche Obodoechina. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Father Obodoechina is a priest of the Archdiocese of Onitsha, right?
Caritas on Nsukka.
Nsukka. Yeah. But how come that it is Onitsha? I met you.
Onitsha province.
Onitsha province. Priest of the Catholic Diocese of Nsukka, and he is the Executive Secretary of Caritas Nigeria. Executive Secretary of Caritas Nigeria. And we're about to discuss what is Caritas Nigeria and what do they do. But let me begin by reading a text of Matthew chapter 25. Then the king, from verse 34, then the king will say to those at his right hand, "Come, you that are blessed by my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me food. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you welcomed me. I was naked, and you gave me clothing. I was sick, and you took care of me. I was in prison, and you visited me." Then the righteous will answer, "Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry and gave you food, or thirsty and gave you something to drink? And when was it that we saw you a stranger and welcomed you, or naked and gave you clothing? And when was it that we saw you sick or in prison and visited you?" And the king will answer, "Truly, truly, I say, just as you did it to one of the least of these who are members of my family, you did it to me." Caritas Nigeria is about putting to practice these words of Jesus Christ. And beyond or apart from what happened that everybody is supposed to know about, what happened during the Civil War, when the most active humanitarian organization in Eastern Nigeria was Caritas Nigeria. This Caritas Nigeria was declared illegal after the war. The federal government of Nigeria claimed that they prolonged the war by bringing food, needed food and medics and medicine for sick children and hungry people, until declared illegal and banned from Nigeria. And for many years, Caritas was not active in Nigeria. But in recent years, Caritas has come back and has become very, very active. And recently, Father Obodoechina, we read of the death of, in the month of July, we read of the death of Father Demot Doran, the priest that did extremely well to mobilize support from across the world to help malnourished children during the war. Now, a lot of people know very little of that history, and we are going to have to do some work to make sure that people know. But I have called you today to tell us about your office, Caritas Nigeria, and your engagements across the country, and your link with other agencies of the church and society, promoting what Caritas is known for internationally, helping in disasters and so on and so forth. But what is Caritas Nigeria, and what are you all engaged in today?
I begin by thanking you, Father George, for the opportunity of today. It is indeed a privilege to talk about Caritas Nigeria and then the work of the church in the humanitarian sector. I begin by saying that the church, the Catholic Church, in its intimate nature, has charity, Caritas, as its significant symbol, whereby it denotes service, interventions, understanding of the plight of people, and then rendering unconditional services to ensure well-being of the individual person. And so in the life of the church, charity, Caritas, is an intimate aspect without which a church cannot exist. A church that does engage in caritative responsibilities, actions, cannot be said to be a church. And so the church in Nigeria has been in operation, has been working for the well-being of people at all levels within her space, at the parish level, at the diocesan level, at the national level, and all that. So it is therefore a part and parcel of the life of the church to be engaged in caritative responsibilities.
As you say, it's part of, I now remember the Synod of Bishops, the 1971 Synod of Bishops, where they issued a statement, post-synodal statement called the Justitia in Mundo, Justice in the World. And number 14 of that document says that work for the poor, work for the welfare of people is an integral part of preaching the good news of evangelization. So that Caritas is not an optional extra, it is an integral part.
That was also echoed in the landmarking document of the Holy Father, Pope Benedict XVI, Deus Caritas Est, that God is love, whereby he mentioned the need for these activities of the church to be organized and made professionalized, whereby it is an organized system so that people could reach the neediest of society without hindrance and without difficulties. And so in trying to organize that, the Bishops' Conference of Nigeria, as we have rightly mentioned, came up to the idea of formalizing this structure, the Caritas, Catholic Caritas Foundation of Nigeria, in 2010. That does not mean then that it was from 2010 that the church began to be engaged in these activities. But as an institution recognized and registered by the Corporate Affairs Commission of Nigeria,
It was 2010.
It was in 2010.
Yeah.
And from that moment to today, we've been having the opportunity of showing the world what we have been doing all this while. And since this board came on, this organization came on board in 2010, she has done a lot of activities within the country and outside the country. The organization has been, having been formed, had its vision and mission, and she had a very ambitious vision to have a society.
That's what visions
to have a society where everyone has a fullness of life. They are taking its bearing from the popular John 10:10, where Christ said that he has come, that all will have life, have it in abundance. And so Caritas then aspires to such a time in our society where all, created in the image and likeness of God, has opportunity of a fullness of life. And what does that mean? Fullness of life doesn't mean without suffering, with all the comfort of the world, but a fullness that is in Christ himself, who is life. And we are then working to see that all the physical hindrances that could prevent an individual person from arriving at his or her fullness of capacity and life, then we'll be able to mitigate through our interventions. And that is also why the first assignment we have is to ensure that the dignity of the human person made in the image and likeness of God is respected, is acknowledged and respected.
Respected and defended.
And defended. So that it is for us a core value in order to see that society, paraphernalia of power and authority, structures of government and all that in society, and at the family level, village level and all that, come to this awareness that a human person is a value, is a resource, is an image of God, whether poor or old, whether young or all that. And so that is one big assignment we have. So in all our interventions, both in the development sector and in the humanitarian sector, primary for us is who is at stake. It's this individual person is at the crossroad. It's not the structure, it's not the fire, it's not the envelope, it's not the fire, it's not the structures, but the individual human person.
You have just mentioned, and I would like our viewers to understand the distinction. You have mentioned humanitarian and development.
Yeah.
Can you make it clear to our people what is humanitarian intervention? What is development intervention?
Yeah, these are also not, they are very important aspects of the same reality, designed for the well-being of individual persons. When we're talking of humanitarian, we're thinking of, for example, areas where there are conflicts and there are humanitarian needs. For example, if you look at, for example, the northeastern Nigeria, the base states of northern Nigeria, the Borno state, the Yobe state, and then the Yola, the Adamawa state. You see, with the insurgency in that area, people are driven out of their homes. Yeah.
So you have IDPs.
IDPs. So in those IDP camps, there are obvious humanitarian needs of water, of shelter,
of
food. So in order to give them also a sense of humanity, a sense of belonging, one, we have to think of how do we supply them water, a clean environment, food to eat, and all that. So the effort of doing that is one intervening in humanitarian circumstances.
So the humanitarian intervention is about where there is crisis or after crisis.
Yeah.
Helping to meet the basic needs of people, to protect their human dignity and
Correct.
so forth. That's humanitarian.
Yes.
Now, what about the development?
Yeah,
aspect?
in the same environment where you have such humanitarian needs, there could also be developmental programs where you are talking, for example, in such war-torn areas.
Yes.
If you are talking of rebuilding and reconstructing the schools, for example, yeah, it is no longer as such humanitarian.
It is no longer emergency
yes,
support.
it becomes also a thing that is constitutive of a development program.
So you go and look for funds to build a clinic.
A clinic.
That's development.
Yes.
To build school.
To school, yes.
That's
to look of the road also going to such places is also development.
Yeah.
Also to think also how will these people who have been sent out of the community quite to come back, how they're going to begin their lives afresh. Yeah, they have to go back to the field to work. There must be some basic structures that give some permanence. And again, it has also become very important today, even in the humanitarian interventions, that there are links between these emergency interventions and also the need for some level of stability on the part of these people, because they must also have their life in their own environment. And the effort to cushion their effects and stabilize them is already taking place in a development environment where you have to go back to the farming and cropping. It requires about 7-8 months. It's not just an emergency, it is something planned. When you think of smart agriculture for the returnees, for example, you're already engaging in some durable development programs. And so these are, I mean, the same facts of science of the same kind.
Yeah, so there's an interface,
yes,
definitely.
That are required for the well-being of the individual person.
Yes, it's an interface between the development and the humanitarian. Yeah. Almost all over the country now we have humanitarian crisis and therefore humanitarian needs.
Yeah.
Just literally the whole of northern Nigeria, and then you particularly northeast and northwest, north central, many places in the north central, with all the crisis in Plateau, in Benue, in Kaduna State. Is your agency Caritas Nigeria active in some of these places?
Yes and no. Yes, because the Caritas Nigeria is not just for itself alone. We have collaborators within the structures of the church. We have the JDPCs, Justice, Development and Peace Commissions.
And you collaborate with them?
Collaborate with them as a mother organization that has an oversight responsibility for these bodies. Because of the capillary nature of the church, they are spread everywhere. And we have also the responsibility to oversee what they are doing, and we are in a dynamic collaboration with them.
Good.
Again, we are not everywhere, for example, because presently we have paucity of funds to be able to reach to every nook and cranny where there are crises. And we depend largely on funded programs. Yeah, but we've discovered that we can't go so far with funded programs in the light of the nature of the dimensions of the crisis around us. And so the Bishops' Conference a couple of months ago have come to a conclusion that the church in Nigeria will not forever be waiting for funders to take up this initiative to respond to the exigencies within our space. That as a church, we have also an onus to see what can we do ourselves. And so this is a fund, the Catholic Bishops' Conference Emergency Fund, designed to respond to emergencies within Nigeria outside of the scope where funders operate. Good. And so that is one major shift, one major contribution the church is making in this direction to bring awareness that we are a church and we respond also to the exigencies and the needs of our members and beyond within the Nigerian space.
Okay, so thank you very much. Now, people would like to know, for example, there are older people who will be watching us and used to hear of Caritas pre-Civil War and during the Civil War. Is it still the same? Is the same Caritas? And what is your link, for example, with Caritas Internationalis? Do you have links with them? And what kind of linkages do you have with Caritas in other countries around us? For example,
okay,
there was crisis in Burkina Faso, in Mali, and now in Niger, crisis all around us. Is Caritas Nigeria linked in any way with Caritas in these other countries?
Yeah, in the first place, the word Caritas in the southeastern Nigeria has a great emotional attachment, a good number, because without the activities of Caritas in Nigeria in 1968 to up to 70 after the war, a number of us would have died. And our ancestors, our people, are very proud of Caritas. And when we went in there in 2017 to begin our HIV intervention, we were able to encounter people who told us stories about what Caritas meant for them. Mm-hmm. And some are not Catholics today, but they remain ever grateful to the interventions done.
This is very important. I mean, I particularly, I'm very passionate about history, about the history of the involvement of the church in Nigeria and the role played by agencies like Caritas in Nigeria before the end of the Civil War, and particularly during the Civil War. So I am hoping that your office will perhaps do some historical research, charge some people to do some historical research so as to properly document. Because you see, recently we lost Father Demot Doran, the Irish priest that was a star, that perhaps did more than any other human being to mobilize support for Eastern Nigeria during the war. And they took a lot of risks to fly planes in loaded with humanitarian relief materials. Do you think it is something that your organization can take up to try to write the history of the work of Caritas during the Civil War for posterity? Don't you think that would be a useful thing to engage in?
I think it is. I made a little effort with the German radio station a couple of years ago, the Deutsche Welle, to grant an interview about our understanding of what Caritas did during the Nigerian Civil War. And I think from perspective of history, it is very important that we see how we could reenact what has happened, because during the war, I was born in 1963, so I was barely 4 years. So I wouldn't be able to tell a lot, but from research, one will be able to read a lot about these interventions. And I think it is very important, an aspect of our work research unit, to be commissioned to do some studies in this regard.
It is, for me, it is absolutely important.
Yes.
I'm able to remember that before the formal registration of Caritas Nigeria, between the year 2001 and 2010, perhaps before 2010, there was some work going on in the name of Caritas Nigeria, doing a lot of, I will call it humanitarian work, such as helping to resettle Nigerian young women who were trafficked to Italy, trafficked to other parts of Europe, and seeking for funding to resettle them and help them learn some vocational skills to begin their life all over. A lot of that was done, apart from the crisis that happened in Kaduna, the 2001 riots in Kaduna, 2002 or 3 riot in Jos. It led to a lot of humanitarian crisis that Caritas Nigeria, before the registration, was involved. I was Secretary General by then, and I know that there was a lot of involvement in that Caritas. So all these things, I think, we will need to put into a documentation, historical documentation for your office. But before we go, I did ask the international on the international level.
Yeah.
Your link with Caritas Internationalis
Yeah.
and the nearby countries.
Yeah, it is very important to know that Caritas Nigeria is not just a standalone. We belong to a larger confederation of 162 nations. Caritas Internationalis was formed formally in 1951. And she celebrated about its 70th anniversary a couple of years ago.
Okay.
And of these 162 member nations, Nigeria belonged to the 46th nation of Africa that belonged to Caritas Africa. These 162 nations were...
we are 46.
Yes, were divided into 7 regions. And the African region has 46 members. And these 46 members, including the Caritas Africa Internationalis, meet once every 4 years. And the Caritas Internationalis General Conference took place in May this year. And myself and then the president of our Caritas Nigeria, Archbishop Adewale Martins, represented the church in Nigeria. And it was a gathering of 2 representatives from these 162 member nations in Rome that took place from 5th of May till 17th of June this year. And it was a robust experience with other Caritas Africa members. And there were interactions and teams of discussions. For example, the African Conference had a beautiful team of building resilient communities together in Africa.
That was a theme.
Yes, for Africa. Yeah, because the African Conference took place 7 days before the General Conference, because of difficulties of meeting on African soil.
So you guys had to take it to Rome to meet.
Yeah,
and use the opportunity of Caritas Internationalis buying you ticket.
No, we did it ourselves. But that was also a problem we have raised among ourselves.
Because it reduced the expenditure. That's what I mean.
Yes, we're trying to use one stone to kill 2 birds. Yes. So every 4 years we meet there.
I actually attended about 2002. I attended such a Caritas International meeting. I think it was in Kigali. I remember.
Beautiful.
It was in Kigali that we met. Yeah.
Good. So the African nation met together and brainstormed and discussed resilient communities in Africa. How can we build that? What are we doing to do that? How can we make the church much more effective in organizing humane society in Africa, being torn by wars and conflicts, poverty, and all that? So it was a very busy and a very important moment, and it also gave hope that the church is not just there, but we are responding, even though we don't have all the funds. But the thought and the thought patterns are that the thought are with the situation in Africa.
I am interested in how, even though what we do in church is not meant for publicity. I mean, Jesus says, you are giving alms, don't let your right hand know what your left hand is doing. However, a lot of people need to know, because I'm aware that in many parts of this country, your staff are present and are doing some work. You have offices or staff in how many places now?
We have offices in 9 states of the Federation, including Abuja.
9 states
and
of the
we have
Federation.
over 1,000 staff working daily.
You have over 1,000. This is what I mean.
Yeah.
That the average person, including many Catholics, don't know about what Caritas is doing.
Yeah.
And we do hear people say, oh, all the church is doing is collecting money and so on and so forth. But how I wish that there can be a little more publicity so that the average Catholic that is contributing money in church knows that some of the money they contribute in church comes to the Catholic Secretariats, come to Caritas office, apart from money received from foreign agencies, but that also some of the money we contribute here is also part of what you use to do humanitarian interventions.
We have planned, we are deliberate about it, because always I've heard people not being aware about what we are doing. Yeah, we in the present fiscal year, we were deliberate to say we must also make the world know that we exist and what we are. Because there is already Caritas University around Enugu. And when you think about Caritas, they say, oh, Caritas University. And we say, no, we're not Caritas University. Or we say Veritas. They say it is Veritas. We say, not Veritas. So we have also a responsibility to explain what is Veritas University, and Veritas University, and then Caritas University, and then Caritas Nigeria.
Yes.
That's a job we have.
And you know, we will not be able to raise much money for the work of Caritas Nigeria if the people really don't know what is Caritas Nigeria.
Exactly.
So that publicity is very, very important.
It's also true. We have, for example, we will be celebrating our 13th anniversary from the 18th to 22nd of September this year. And a part of the program is engagement with the press, with the media. Yeah, how would media help us amplify what we are doing to the larger public? Yeah, with a view to drawing attention to the areas of need and areas of support. So we'll be deliberate about that, because we know also that if we are to put in screen what we have done in terms of in the areas of health, HIV/AIDS in this country, for example, the people who are put on treatment to suppress the viral load and all that, and then the interventions have done in the northeastern Nigeria, or the support are given to trafficked persons, men and women across this country in Edo, yeah, or the refugee, about the 11,000 Cameroonian refugees whom we have been working with and nursing and assisting for the past 5 years in Obodoechina and Cross River State. It's enormous what I've done.
Good. So that's the point I'm making, that I am aware, because I was there. I'm aware of what Caritas does, but I know that many people are not aware what Caritas does. That you have almost 1,000 staff spread across this country, and that you have done a lot of work in the Northeast, and that you have done a lot of work with refugees, with IDPs, and HIV patients, and people who were trafficked that you have resettled, and so on. These are things that the average person watching TV does not know. So that's part of the reason why I call you, so that we can use the opportunity of reflections to let people know that there is something called Caritas. It's not just during the war. I mean, if you go to the East and you say Caritas Nigeria, many people just think of what happened during the war.
Exactly.
But that since after the war, that since about whatever, we have been doing a lot of things. So I want to congratulate you for the Obodoechina and your staff for the work you are doing, and hope that as you do more, the society will get to know, and that people, and I also appeal to Nigerians, including Catholics especially, to support the work that Caritas does, and that when there is a Lenten appeal, they will support the Lenten appeal, because some of the Lenten appeal money should come to Caritas, right?
Yeah, it does come.
God bless you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.